Hello, good afternoon. This interview isn't happening. If you wish to stay part of this show, or you wish to know more, then please stay. But if not, leave this show and this website now. Good choice. Guys, we have got some special guests. And it's fair to say they're quite special. Hello there, everybody, and welcome to LOL starring Chris Smith, the best comedy show on London Radio. Why is that? It's because it's the only comedy show on London Radio. How are you all doing? We are having a spectacular time, and that is because I have got some special guests on me right now. I have the writers and directors of the award-winning, of the Audioverse Awards, multiple years of cast, writing, directing of one of the most listened to fiction podcasts on right now. It's been top 10 in the US and the UK for multiple years. It is a story that is literally that rises like a phoenix, in the sense it comes back numerous times out of the dead, and somehow thinks, oh, you know what? You think this show's gone? Nah, it will come back. I have the creators, Mr. Phillip, Thorne, Mr. Øystein, Ulsberg of the Amelia Project. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Chris.
Enjoyed my little bit there.
No, that was the perfect introduction, I think.
Well, I feel like I had to just sort of tease a little bit and just try my best to, incorporate what I can with you two. So, there's no better way to start this off, because we're not just going to talk about the show, we're going to talk about your lives making the show, and I will give everyone warning, we will be talking about spoilers. Spoilers will come up in the show, but only as much as whatever is out right now will be talked about. That's it. No future episodes will be talked about, or it's like teasing things, but nothing like big.
That's what we've said, and Pip and I are going to try our very best to keep to that. But it is sometimes a bit confusing to know like what is out and what have we just, we know things are coming and we're so far ahead. But we'll do our very best to not spoil anything that isn't out yet.
Well, there's no better way of starting this out than Phillip, Øystein, tell me your story.
Wow. Okay.
How did the media start?
I mean, I guess if you want to go all the way back, it starts about 20 years ago when Øystein and I met at Rosebruford College, which is a theatre school just outside London in Sidcup. So Øystein and I met there on the theatre directors course, which is a course that no longer exists now. But at the time, it was a very, very small course. We were just 6 students. So a very kind of small, intimate course. And Øystein and I kind of immediately bonded. We were both the only foreign students, so we'd both come to London to study. You can't hear from my accent probably, but I grew up in Germany, and my mum's German. And
I come from Norway, grew up in Oslo.
I mean, that's an insane collaboration, just because there's of this international cast that you all have come together for this.
Yeah.
The whole international thing really started already back then. And I think, Pip and I meeting at Rosebruford College, I think from the very beginning, the first little projects that we did was very much about kind of meeting different people and gathering different people and kind of, exploring how people from different places in the world can kind of get together and make something happen and what can kind of come out of that.
I remember, I think the first project that we did together was, we were really interested in filmmaking back then. And so we created this project called Impro Film, where at the weekends, we would just invite anybody who wanted to come and join us. And the great thing about being at a theatre school like Rosebruford is you've got all these different disciplines on like one campus. So there were actors, set designers, costume makers, and so on. So we got like a whole range of different people. On Saturday, we would brainstorm an idea for a film and do some like a short film and do some preparation for it. And then on Sunday, we'd shoot it. Sunday, all through the night, we'd edit it. And then by the end of the weekend, we'd have like a little short film of very varying quality, but at least, you know, we made something, you know, within the space of like 2 days, we made something.
And by Monday morning, first class on Monday morning, we'd be exhausted.
I don't doubt, but then,
but yeah.
So does that then show that even back then you sort of realized that, oh, I can work with each other, or was it a bit of like clashing ideas at the start?
I think Pip and I always I feel like we always just got along. Like when I would pitch something and Pip would be like, oh my God, but then we could do this. And we just sort of, and like build on each other's ideas. And that was the great thing about the two of us, is how we always kind of build on top of each other's ideas.
I think so. And I think, I mean, we enjoy kind of bouncing ideas off each other, which isn't to say that we always agree, but I think either, I mean, the thing is like disagreement is, so sometimes if, it just happened the other day, I wrote something and Øystein had some very, not harsh, but like some
I was honest.
It was very honest and said, look, this doesn't work. And he was right, and now I have rewritten it, and it is a lot better. At other times, Øystein says that something doesn't work, and I disagree. But then the thing is that then forces me to justify why I think that he's wrong and why I think it works. And in the process of me having to justify it, I actually often manage to sharpen my own ideas and make them better. So I think it's not that we always agree, but it's that I think the disagreements that we have are very productive. But I think back then, I think the thing that really that I really valued about Øystein is that on the one hand, it was like the creativity, but you know, I know a lot of creative people, but it's the combination of creativity and practicality. So it was like always we have ideas, but then very quickly it would be down. It would be like, okay, how do we do this? And I think that kind of combination of creativity and a sort of practicality,
very hands-on approach.
That is something that you know, that's why I kind of thought, oh, we can really work together, and I think that's something that we have in common. And
and Boston friendship began.
I think that's the thing that we really bond over, and that our friendship is also based on, is very much the kind of, it's the creativity and the creating together. I think that is at the heart of it. Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit, but what were some of the film projects and things you did years ago at school, and did any of them sort of like, were any of them a stepping stone to Amelia?
I mean, I think everything in a way is a stepping stone towards Amelia, just in the sense that we got to try out kind of various different ideas, ways of working together, modes of collaboration. So after, you know, we made these different kind of improvised films whilst we were still students. Then for our directing bachelors, like our bachelor performance, so that the final performance that we directed as the end project of studying, Phillip and I managed to convince our tutors to let us co-direct something, and we did the Hamlet Machine by Heine Müller, and one of the first kind of productions in Britain of that play. And I think through all of these different projects, even though they're in different modes, what we've kind of found at the core of what we're doing is also kind of encapsulated in the name of our company. So our company is called Imploding Fictions.
Yes.
We like to take, you know, a fiction or a concept and pick it apart and look what's inside. I mean, it's a kind of curiosity that's sort of encapsulated in that. And I think that is kind of the nugget in a way that kind of runs through everything that we do, and which is also sort of culminated, I think, in the Amelia Project, which, you know, whilst being a story that is sort of constructed and that kind of works as a story, there are also a lot of kind of moments of picking itself apart or having a kind of meta joke at the expense of the thing that we're making or the episode that we're making. There's a lot of trying to do the impossible which really tickles us.
You know, it says a lot that we're 10 minutes in. We probably should actually mention what the Amelia Project is for anyone who hasn't listening. So I'll hand it over to you two in basically a paragraph or less. For people who don't know, what is the Amelia Project?
We are a secret agency. Sorry, Øystein.
Go ahead, Pip.
We are a secret agency that allows you to completely disappear from your current life by faking your death, and allows you to reappear with a clean slate and a completely new identity. So if you've ever been daydreaming about what it would be like to completely start over, that is the service that we offer.
Yes, and it's a podcast which is been on for numerous years, where there's essentially the interviewer interviewing different people, asking to basically fake their deaths and reappear.
That's right. So it's a comedy, scripted comedy podcast, fiction podcast. It's been running since 2017. We're now in our 5th season. I think we're around episode 90 or something like that. With a full cast, full sound design, kind of immersive experience. That's what it is.
I mean, it's amazing. Well, we'll get to the actual plot and things in a bit later, but just from the ground up, just the fascination with death and rebirth.
Yeah.
You also talked a little bit about how you like the idea of your players where it is essentially an interview. It is essentially two people talking it out, and that's what the whole show is. But then, where did the fascination of death and rebirth come from?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, who isn't fascinated by death and rebirth, right? We all know that we're gonna die. We all know that is the one thing that everybody has in common. We're all born and we're all gonna die. And the huge kind of question of what happens then, and is there an afterlife, is something I think that I don't know if there are any human beings who don't at some point in their life kind of face that. But there's also a question of, I mean, in our show, the death is fake. And in a sense, and there's a question of, is the new life that you adopt, if you create a new personality for yourself, is that real? To what extent are you still yourself afterwards? What is an identity? I mean, I think these questions they aren't just about death and rebirth. They are very much questions of identity, I think. What makes a human being? Why are we who we are? What makes us tick? And can you change that?
Absolutely. That's the kind of the philosophical kind of through line that runs through the whole thing. I think it's fair to say back then when we came up with that concept, we didn't realize just quite how malleable that fake death and rebirth concept is. And what we've now found, having done this for many, many years, is just that around those beats of death and rebirth, we can create so many completely different types of story, and we've still nowhere near kind of exhausted the pool of stories that one can tell through that idea. We weren't aware, I think, at the time that we'd really found a concept that keeps giving. It really is like the sort of the goose that keeps laying the golden eggs in terms of story potential.
But I do love the fact that because we'll still get into this, it can go fantastical and mystical and insane in a lot of times. Now what the show is very grounded in the way that it's an interviewer interviewing a person. It is literally just at the base of it is one person talking to another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which how hard is it to all keep that ground level, particularly in the sense of how insane some of the ideas that you two have had. Like, we're gonna just do this. It's like, how do we fit that into this little bit here?
I mean, in a way, I think this thing of just having two people in a room talking together is also something that Pip and I are kind of genuinely interested in. The art of dialogue, or the power of dialogue. What happens in a conversation? What happens between two people underneath the language or through the language. Yeah, I think it's, but I mean, the show has developed over the years, even though it still has that kind of, we try to stick to the kind of interview format as much as we can to kind of be true to the core of the show. We have added over the years other kinds of scenes, a bigger world. Then, you know, we, at the end of season 2, we start kind of broadening up and including a story that is about not only the interviewee, you know, the client who comes in, and the interviewer, and them trying to figure out how to solve this person's dilemma through a fake death, but we've also added a story about the company itself. Again, we're into the plot, the spoilers bit now, but in season 3, they, you know, the Amelia Project are on the run from the MI5, who's cottoned on to what it is they're doing, which is obviously entirely illegal. So other kind of,
by the time we kind of got to season 3, we were sort of ready for that challenge of kind of like taking it out of the office and taking it out of the interview format. But at the beginning, it was a very kind of conscious choice, because Øystein and I have no background in audio. You know, this is the first audio thing we've made, and so at the beginning we were like, we want to keep the format of this really simple, and you know, and we want it to kind of mirror a sort of a regular podcast, which is, you know, 2 people chatting a lot of the time, talking. So yeah, we want to tell everything through this very contained interview format that takes place in real time in one space, and then see how much we can, how wacky we can get, or like how much we can stretch that very simple format. So at the beginning, it's just that, you know, it's the interviewer and it's a client who wants to disappear, and they sit across each other at a desk drinking cocoa, and they discuss why this person wants to disappear, and how they want to come back in their new life. And then, you know, and then gradually we start kind of seeing, okay, what else can we do in this format? What if we keep the format, but the character can time travel within it? What if the character is aware that they are in a podcast? What if, so even within these constraints in the very first season, you know, we try and see how we can sort of subvert it.
But that says so much, because I remember listening to the first season, and it's something where it's just like you point out, you do tease a little bit that you're not just it, like the formula isn't just that. You stretch it out. You do break the fourth wall quite a lot, especially with you two, which I find really funny.
Yeah,
and like
we appear. Yeah,
you do sort of go into this when you think of it like season 1. You think like, oh, it's not just that simple. But then as we go on, and we'll get to it later, but like season 2, 3, 4, you don't just open the world out, you open up all of history essentially, and just go as far out as possible. Like, so was that always the mindset of like, this is where we want to be, or was it literally just like, as you went on, you went think like, I wonder if we could do that, and then that, and then that, and then that? Like, was it just escalating?
It's a combination of both, isn't it?
It really is a combination of both, because I remember in 2017, when the show was absolutely in its infancy, we were finalists at the Austin Film Festival in their podcast track with the Amelia Project. And I remember Pip and I sitting in a diner in Austin in the US, talking about the potential of making a historical season and going back in time. So that idea, which we got,
and this was at a point where the show hadn't been released yet.
The first we sent the script in, and we're finalists with the script. So the first episode had been recorded but not released. So, you know, this is very, very, very much at the beginning, and we were talking about the idea of, you know, both the you know, what happens if the interviewer gets caught and put in prison? Could he still fake deaths from his prison cell? What happens if we start, you know, going back in history? Has there been some kind of historical version of this company? What would that look like? Which we don't get to really properly until season 5, which we're in at the moment. So yeah, some of these ideas of how we could stretch the concept was very much with us from the beginning. But then along the way, there has been a lot of moments where we've gone, oh, I just had a new idea. What if we try this? What if we try that? Yeah.
How much of that then is constrained to you two, or do others pitch in?
Generally, it's Pip and me. Yeah. In the 5th season, we've invited some guest writers in, and some of our kind of main cast, especially Alan, who plays the interviewer, is of course a very important collaborator. And so, but
I would say
very
in terms
rarely,
of story,
it's
the
two of us.
It's Øystein and I.
Yeah.
When it comes to character and how the characters have developed, I would say that the actors have had a huge impact on how specific characters have developed.
That's true, but not really through like discussing with us. It's just it's mainly through the way that they've been playing them, the choices they make as actors with the text, where we go, oh, that's an interesting way of saying that line. That's an interesting emotion in this moment. Okay, so the character's a bit like this, and then we can build on that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We can't not talk about this whilst talking about the fantastic cast, as you mentioned, that you do have. Mr. Alan Budgeon as the interviewer, Julia C. Thorne, Julia Mozzarella, Hemi Jürgen, and just like a bunch of these people who are so brilliant. Did you have a set idea of who these characters were going to sound like, or when they just went to the room, you were just like, that's you. That's the person I want?
Good question. I mean, the very first person the way we interviewed, the way person we auditioned was Alan, and he sent us, I think it's 5 different voices for the interviewer. One of them was like an interviewer with a German accent, and like so there were all sorts of different. Yeah, I know, but at that point we were like, just give us what you've got and we'll see what fits. And one of them was the kind of plummy Englishman that we've stuck with, and we were like, that's the one. That is absolutely the one. For other actors, we know their voice already, like Julia Morizawa, for example, who plays Amelia, who is in the first, plot spoiler, in the first 2 seasons, we only ever hear her voice as the voice on the answer phone at the beginning of the show, which is kind of the introduction. And then it's only, later in the show where she's finally revealed to be a real character. She's not just an answer phone, she's actually the boss. She's actually the head of the company. But we knew Julia Morizawa from the Bright Sessions. We've heard, which was a favorite show of ours, which is fantastic. One of the kind of early indie fiction podcasts. And
just a very quick digression there, which is because when we started like 6-7 years ago, whatever, there weren't that many fiction podcasts around. But one of the big ones that was around was the Bright Sessions, and Øystein and I were both big fans, and we were like, imagine if we could get Julia Morizawa from the Bright Sessions.
Wouldn't that be incredible?
Wouldn't that be incredible? But like,
she's probably never going to say yes. She's never going to say yes.
How are we going to do it? And so we wanted to. So basically, what we did is we got a hold of a typewriter, and we typed out a letter that started the same way, Chris, as you started this show, saying, congratulations, this is the Amelia Project. If you're not serious about it, stop reading now. You've chosen to continue. Congratulations. This is the Amelia Project contacting you. And we put like a top secret stamp on it. We made it like look really, and it was only like about halfway down the page that it became, that we kind of revealed our true intentions, which is that we were creating a fiction podcast about this secret organization, and would she consider coming on board? We got hold of, we didn't even have her postal address, but we'd met someone, we'd met someone in Austin who knew her, so we could send it to this person, who then hand delivered it to Julia Morizawa, and then we got a reply from her via standard email, saying that yes, she'd love to be involved.
I mean, I have to admire you on the level of dedication you have there, not just in typing, not just in writing out the letter as you would the company, but getting a typewriter to do it.
Yep.
She must have just looked and felt like, what is that?
I think she was rather impressed by our level of dedication. I think that probably was one of the reasons why she said yes. And since then, she's become a fantastic collaborator. She's wonderful to work with. She's such a great comedian and an actress. But yeah,
all of them I mean, have proven the fact that they are so their voice is what they do to it with the show is so. I mean, Alan himself, like you said, the funky British accent, you just mean like, I can't not hear him as that person, as the interviewer, which is absolutely amazing.
And it's worth noting that that is not his actual voice. He's Scottish.
Yes.
It's always hilarious when people who know the Amelia Project hear his real voice for the first time.
Do they freak out? Like, oh my God, you're
pretty much.
But I absolutely love that. So, I mean, the fact that you said a little bit, the fact that 2017, you were right. There weren't that many fiction podcasts out there. You were literally one of the only few getting on there. But the fact that now that you have just, I mean, you're not just a well-known podcast, you're a well-beloved one in the sense that you are one of the top recommendations of fiction podcasts out there, where people are like, if you want a comedy podcast, go to you. In the sense of, it's just, not only is it the sound quality is amazing, the cast is great, it's also absolutely goddamn bonkers, which is just fantastic. But I mean, was there a specific reason to do a podcast in that sort of level, or like was it an attempt to, like, did you want to sort of make this live action, like, visual?
No, I mean, it's so pragmatic. It's so ridiculously pragmatic, the reason why we ended up making a podcast. Because, as we said, we came from theatre, and Pip and I, we were running Imploding Fictions already. We'd been making theatre productions for several years already, kind of touring around Europe and so on. But Pip and I used to both live in London, and then Pip moves to Paris, I moved to Oslo, and suddenly getting into the same space to make theatre isn't really possible anymore. Theatre is very analog. Theatre is very much, you've got to be here and now and in the same space for a long period of time, and it just wasn't feasible. And we were kind of watching, at the time, it was a bit of a crisis in a way. We were watching kind of Imploding Fictions and our collaboration crumble. It was falling apart. It wasn't there anymore. We would suddenly, I was doing projects with Imploding Fictions, but Pip wasn't in it, and it didn't feel right. And so we were kind of wondering, like, how do we start collaborating again? How do we not lose this thing that we've got? And then it was Pip who came with the idea of, how about we try doing this thing called, a fiction podcast? And I was like, okay, I haven't really listened to podcasts at all. I don't know what that is, but sure, I'll figure that out. I'll listen to some. And I listened to, I think, Welcome to Night Vale was one of the very first one. And then Hello from the Magic Tavern was a very early one that I listened to. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. I like this format. I like being in this world that's inside of my head. And from that, this idea of just working together on a podcast meant we could create digitally. We can sit in two different countries and still collaborate. And I mean, today, Pip and I have one conversation going on WhatsApp, one on Messenger, one on email, one by SMS. At any given point of time, there are like 4 different conversations about the Amelia Project happening, just to try and keep track of all the different strands we have. Like, and we can do it. We're in communication and about this thing. We meet online to record, and then every so often, luckily, we get to meet in person. But that's been the way to kind of save our collaboration and Imploding Fictions. And it turned out that it was a medium that we completely fell in love with, and a way of telling a story that that also really, really interested us. I mean, I can talk for myself, but I mean, at the time, I was also a bit I'd been working in theatre for a few years, creating productions, directing other people's stuff. And I was feeling kind of 2 things. One was, I really want to write. I want to tell my own stories and not just direct other people's stories. And 2, I always disappointed at the end of the play because it's an hour and a half long and then it's over. And I'm like, well, what happens to these people now? What happens to them tomorrow? And through creating a series, I can actually discover what does happen to somebody tomorrow. You can keep talking about, telling stories about the same characters over years, and how we've been able to develop, especially, our core characters, and especially the interviewer, from season to season, and kind of build that character and deepen that character. And that has been a great discovery, I think, creatively.
I'll ask you this first, and then I'll move on to it. Like, you just said, Øystein, that you lot do live in different countries, and you're asking yourselves to collaborate multiple times. Phillip, how much of a pain is that to constantly try and get Øystein's attention? I need to call him. Oh God.
Well, the thing is, like, we actually, our main mode of communication these days is WhatsApp voice messages. Because because we both have families now, so we both have young kids, and so it's actually incredibly difficult to just find an hour to sit down and have a Zoom conversation, have a meeting. So obviously we do that too, but on a sort of daily basis, what we do is we probably send about 10-20 WhatsApps to each other a day, like voice messages,
often like 10 minutes long.
Often, yeah. And because we can, well, two things. One thing is, it's kind of between, it's sort of whenever there is like a moment between things, that we sort of use that time to send a message. And then the other thing is that it actually works pretty well for brainstorming, because I'll have an idea, I'll send it off to Øystein, and then actually it's quite good sometimes to just sit with an idea for a bit before you respond. So then whatever, I'll be just doing some low-level admin tasks like getting back to emails, this and that. Øystein has just sent me an idea. I'll have it kind of just mulling over in the back of my mind while I do my emails and so on, and then suddenly after I've sat with that idea for a while, I will have another idea that builds on that, and then I'll send Øystein like a 5-minute voice message, and then an hour later maybe I get one back, and that's sort of how we often end up brainstorming and coming up with ideas.
Although I think the real reason why we use WhatsApp messages and not a phone call is because then I get to just talk for 10 minutes without Pip interrupting.
Well, then I'll take the opportunity of the fact that I had 2 hours with you, both in the one place, as an immense honor. The fact that I got you two in one spot. But so. Has there ever been a thought, especially we can talk with specific episodes, because when I listen to these, I can imagine a specific episode to think like, oh, if I watch this like live, if I actually see this performed, because I can understand how this can be viewed as a stage play in some episodes. I mean, like for instance, like the Shakespeare Company one, I could see that live and be like, oh yeah, I can see like, has there ever been a temptation to be like, oh, I'd love to just see this episode on stage one day?
We have recently done it. We did our first sort of proper live show in May in London, in a very cool venue called Theatre Ship, which is a new venue in Canary Wharf, Isle of Dogs. And so we wrote a new story which is set on a ship, and we performed it on Theatre Ship as a live show with the main cast. So that was a kind of like going back to our sort of theatre roots and doing a staging of an Amelia Project story, and it was a lot of fun, and we hope to do more of those things in the future.
Absolutely.
I think I remember you was being advertised, and I just sort of missed it because unfortunately I wasn't in the country. But typical. But like, so did it bring back any fond memories of doing stage productions at the time? Just being like, oh yeah, I remember doing this.
I mean, I work along when I don't do Amelia Project here in Norway. I work in the theatre, so for me, it didn't feel that long ago. But I know that Pip's kind of been away from theatre much longer than me, and probably missed it a lot more.
And also, like, the thing is, because it was great to be able to also because for us, especially when we're recording in a studio, to be honest, it kind of feels like a theatre production to us. There's so much. I mean, we often on our Patreon, we often share like behind the scenes videos of like how we make episodes, and you can really, I mean, the voice acting is incredibly physical. So, in order to get the emotion through your voice, you have to. Oh, sorry, that's my earpod that just popped out.
You're being too physical now.
I'm being too physical, yes. Yeah, but it's very, I mean, often after we've recorded an episode, like the actors are like are really exhausted and sweating, and and often, like, I sit there watching them in the studio and watching their facial expressions and watching their body language and kind of thinking, oh, it's such a shame that people don't get to see this. So putting it onto stage, it was really lovely to be able to share some of that and some of the. I mean, I think audio is is an incredible medium, and it's amazing how much you can convey just through the voice, and how it activates your imagination, and how it invites you to fill in the visuals with your imagination. But there are some things that you that you can only convey through facial expressions and body language, and visuals, so in the future it would be it would be lovely if we could do more of that as well, more Amelia live shows.
Well, I hope to finally be able to attend one.
And another way that we have been expanding the world of Amelia sort of visually is through drawing, through creating sort of graphic, well, for now we've sort of done a sort of proof of concept graphic novel short, and sort of reimagining the world of the Amelia Project in graphic novel form.
Oh, I love that, because I mean, I like anything. Not just whilst you have this, you also have a fantastic fan base which do so much honors. I mean, every time when they ask, I hear you guys do the Patreon, like, we're gonna have this fan do this sketching, which I've always loved. But like your fans of it spectacular, particularly also in the drawings and the art that they do.
Absolutely.
And I've seen a whole bunch of them, which are fantastic. Have you ever looked at some and think like, oh, I didn't know that's how they saw these characters, or were you just generally like awestruck?
I mean, yeah, I get amazed every time somebody sends something in. It's fascinating to see that there are sort of so many different ways of imagining what these characters look like. I think that's fantastic. I think that's one of the great things about the audio medium, that you're kind of allowed to really just use your own imagination to create the characters and their faces and their surroundings.
And there are certain things that have become almost canon, which have arisen through fan art.
Gotcha.
For example, there is somebody who, a very, very talented fan artist who, I forget what that condition is called, but when you have two different colored eyes.
Monochromatic.
Yeah.
So who drew the interviewer with two different eye colors. And I remember seeing that for the first time and thinking, oh, that's really, I like that. And that has now been picked up by other fan artists. And so that actually now appears in the work of various fan artists. And it's even got to a stage where a few months ago, Alan asked us, he said, like, I feel really stupid, but like, where, I can't remember, like, when in the podcast is it mentioned that the interviewer has two different eye colors? Because like, I just can't remember that episode. Which episode was it? And we were like, it's not in the podcast. It's never mentioned. It's not in the podcast at all. This comes purely from the fan art.
Just be like, but I should have read this somewhere. Like, you didn't read it, you saw it.
Yeah.
But then like, there's that, I mean, the interview is one thing. Kozlowski, on the other hand, how's the fan art of that man? Because that must be insane.
Yeah, I mean, Kozlowski, he's the in-house surgeon of the Amelia Project, and he's actually, like, when he first sort of appears, he's described quite intricately in the podcast as a very big man.
A very big man with multiple tattoos.
Yes,
everywhere.
very bizarre tattoos.
Have you seen fan art of people trying to draw as many of the tattoos as possible?
Yes, we have. Although a lot of people just go, I'm just going to do the main ones and then scribble a bit for the rest.
So if there are three ways that you can see, like we try and gather as much of the fan art as we can and actually publish it on our website. Obviously, we ask the fan artists for permission first. So there is a place on the website where you can go. Otherwise, a lot of it gets posted on Tumblr. So if you look for the hashtag the Amelia Project on Tumblr, and also on Patreon, we have a sort of a chat where there is also a fan art channel, and you don't even have to be a paying member of Patreon. You just need to create a free account, and you can see it all there. But yeah, there is some fantastic stuff. The thing about Kozlovsky is that yeah, he is in the show he is described as a giant. And the actor who plays him, Hemi Yeroham, a wonderful actor who we cast during in 2020 during COVID, and we cast him over Zoom, and we recorded for about 1.5 years. We actually never met face to face, and we only recorded and rehearsed over Zoom. So our only experience of communicating with him was the way that we're communicating now. We saw him as a rectangle. And then after 1.5 years, finally we get to meet to record in person in London. At the time, Hemi was in La Cage aux Folles, the musical in Hyde Park. And so Alan and I went to see him in that musical. And just before the show, he came out to meet us. And it turns out that he's tiny. He's a very, very small man. And Alan and I were just both so surprised because we'd only ever seen him from the chest up. And just because of course, in audio drama, the actor doesn't have to match the character, but just somehow we had just all assumed that he's 6 foot and that he was a tall man. Yeah, we were so surprised. But he's fantastic for the part, and he plays a very, very convincing giant in audio.
Okay, I mean, just to pick onto that, have a lot of, because this does happen a lot of like big podcasts and musicals and things, but in terms with fan art, have a lot of the fan art been trying to mimic what the voice actors look like into the characters? Like when people draw the interview, do they just try and draw Alan?
Some do, but most not, I would say. I think there are some.
Alan is probably the closest. I think, yeah. I mean, I can see a bit of Alan in some of the art. When it comes to the others, when it comes to
the two Julias, for example,
the two Julias and Hemi Kozlovsky, not so much.
I would love to see if Joey and Salvatore. So I'm looking and thinking, like, what the hell? Like, this is such a weird thing. I missed it, by the way. Sure. Yeah,
I mean, with Joey and Salvatore, they're the two henchmen, the two Italian henchmen, and we've actually swapped voice actors. So there are different voice actors for those two parts in the first couple of seasons, and the ones who play them now, and those actors look absolutely nothing like each other. So that's also something that happens, and
that's how audio and voice acting works.
Yeah, and for the for the fan art, there is some fan art of the two of them, and again, it's very much based on, I think, what you hear rather than what people have looked up. Yeah.
So just in terms of the audio, because I sort of, because I've said this stuff, we're going to basically go into, when we get into the next hour, we're going to go full spoiler mode and tease everyone with the whole thing, so I don't want to get into that. But right now with the audio stuff, because no matter what, it's a challenge. You have got to basically give people the world, the scope, everything inside just using audio. What episode do you say is was particularly the hardest to do audio only?
I think I've got one. Which one have you got?
I've got one too. Okay, shall we say it at the same time?
What do you got?
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Pretzel.
Wow! That was amazing. Really? Wow.
So pretzel is a those sort of doors opening, closing theater farces where it's all about kind of near misses. One person goes through one door, another person comes through another door, and it's all about timing, and it's all about it's all about encounters that almost happen, but people who just miss each other, and miscommunication and so on.
And a lot of people who if they had met, then the story would have gone in a completely different way. And about you meet somebody, but you think they're somebody else than who you're actually meeting. Yes, there are a lot of
and
kind
that
of
is a very
tropes in
visual,
that type
that
of
is a very
farce.
visual kind of medium, because you,
Yeah.
and in a way it goes against everything that you're, so when you sort of learn how to write a good audio drama script, you're always told, you know, keep the number of characters down, keep the kind of the movement down, and so on. And this type of farce relies so heavily on keeping track of where individual people are at individual moments and being kind of very clear. And, you know, so doing that in audio should kind of be impossible. And
if
it's one thing that we love, it's doing the impossible.
Speaking as a fan, you did pull it off, because it is. I mean, that is a weird episode. That is one where it's just like, how in God's name did you come up with? But they're like, you are right. It relies entirely a lot on visual.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite episodes, and that is also very much an episode that Øystein and I sort of co-wrote together, which is actually a lot of my favorite episodes of the show are episodes that were created in that way, because we create in very, very different ways. So sometimes, you know, I write an entire episode and then Øystein kind of looks at it and gives a few notes, and vice versa. You know, sometimes I will write an episode up to a certain point and then I get stuck and I'm like, I don't know how to solve this next bit. I send it to Øystein, and Øystein has the solution and writes on. And again, that also happens vice versa. And then sometimes things happen, like as with Pretzel, where Øystein had the original idea of like, how about we do a doors opening, doors closing theater farce? And I remember saying, that's not possible. Then Øystein writing a draft, sending it to me, and it didn't work at all. But I thought, actually, there is something in here. Like there are some really good moments in here. Like it doesn't work yet, but there are some great moments. And then, you know, taking the moments that I did think worked, writing a new thing around that, sending it back to Øystein, and I think we went back and forth, many times.
Yeah.
But it's weird, until like you saw it and went, oh damn, it can't work. We've got to do it now.
I was delighted. No, I loved being proved wrong. And in the end, I think it turned out to be a really interesting episode.
No, I love that. So we got like maybe 8 minutes left, so I'll ask one more question, then we'll go to a song just to end the first hour. But just to let the people know, we do have more coming up. We're not just getting to that. So we'll talk the hardest episode to record. What was the easiest? What was the one you were? What's the easiest script where you were just like, you know what, this just writes itself?
Ooh,
I think I've got one.
Okay, I'm have to think about that one.
Yeah, I think for me it's so we brought a character back after about a 5-year absence, and it's actually our very first episode is called Zale Indigo Ravenheart. It's about a cult leader who the leader of a suicide cult, who in the last moment before leading his followers into a mass suicide suddenly gets cold feet and realizes that maybe he doesn't believe after all. Cue an interview with the Amelia Project, and that was actually that was the very first. So we recorded the first 2 episodes on the same day, and so that was the very first audio thing we ever made. And then just very recently, for the current season, we have that character come back. And because I've listened to that episode probably more than any other episode, because, you know, because it is, you know, at the very beginning, and because, you know, I've just, whenever we present the show, that episode gets played again and again. I just know how that actor delivers every single line and every single beat. So basically, when I was writing that script, I just knew exactly what it would sound like. And then we got the actors back in, Alan and this guy, back together into a studio, hadn't seen each other actually since then. So we hadn't seen each other for 6 years. And it was just like, basically, I mean, it just came alive exactly the way we did, pretty much just one take. I mean, of everything. And it was just there, which generally never happens. Generally, there's always this surprising like whenever you first hear your words out loud with the actors, often it's a nice surprise. Often they bring something to it that you that surprises you in a good way. Every now and again, you realize, oh shit, this doesn't work, and we're going to have to work a lot to get it to the place where I want it. But in this case, it was just like 1-to-1. It was just there.
Øystein, you got one?
I do have one, actually. Raven. It's an episode about a woman who thinks that she is a premonition, for death. Wherever she goes, death will occur. And she wants to escape her curse in a way. She doesn't want to be a premonition of death. And that is an episode where I just had that idea. And the kind of plot line, I went for a walk and I was kind of just telling the story to myself, and it took, I don't know, I was out kind of walking for like half an hour, and I just had the plot, and I sat down and I wrote it. There was hardly any rewriting at all. The story just flowed out. I sent it to Pip. He was like, "This is great." Yeah, and that was one that just sort of, it just came, and it was just contained and clear and worked from off the bat. Yeah.
Can I just say, just you were talking about Phillip, just like the fact that the first episode, just you reminded me, the first episode is literally a start of a cult leader trying to escape the cult leader of a suicide pact. Is in itself such a weird way to start the show. It's just like, oh, we're going that way, we're setting it off. It's just like, wow, all right.
I do quite like that we are starting with some. I mean, there's also, you know, in the very first episode, the credits, because that we play with the idea in the first episode about this idea of antithon, the fact that there's another planet on the other side of the sun that we can't see, but it's the opposite of Earth. And because we're playing with the idea of opposites, the credits in the very first opposites say, this show was not written by Øystein Brager and Pip Thorne. Yeah. It was not, it did not star Alan Bergen, etc. So in the very first show, in the very first credits, we already go in with a meta joke. And I do quite like that, to kind of set up for everybody who's listening to this show.
You know, like, what there is,
this isn't going to be my regular kind of audio drama. This is something else. They've got other things up their sleeve.
There is also a joke in that episode that I don't think, or like that nobody has ever mentioned, ever picked up on. So I'm not sure if, which is, nobody's ever mentioned this, which is, at the very end, we do our very first Patreon pitch where we say, you know, hi, I'm Phillip, I'm Øystein, we're co-creators of the show. Please do, you know, if you enjoyed this, you can listen to it for free, but if you enjoy it, please do consider supporting our work. Now, in that thing, I say, hi, my name is Øystein, and Øystein says, hi,
my name is Pip.
Because we are still in that antithon reversal mode. Now, obviously, that is the first time anybody's ever introduced to us. So how would people know that we are, you know, so they don't know us yet. So, but we actually introduce ourselves in the wrong way.
Again, I love your commitment that the first time they're going to hear you two, you introduce yourself as the other ones. Just like, okay, it's just like, just confused. I mean, because one last minute, I will say, one of the very first, I think it was the first season where I sort of caught on. I was like, oh, okay, you guys are just going insane. It's like the pure meta episode where it's like the guy realizes he's in a podcast and he's trying to get out of it. And then and then there's a live show following up of him going into different podcasts. It's just like, I mean, honestly, when I heard that, I was just like, oh, you two must be having so much fun. Just like, let's just do what we can. And just, I'm like, okay.
The Percy episode, I think, is one of, I mean, it is one of the most listened to and talked about episodes still of the show. And it's so often, like when you look at the comments on that episode, it's like so often, it's like that's when people decide that they're going to keep listening. So, you know, because it's like episode 6 or 7 or something. And, you know, often people are like, you know, I was kind of like, you know, I quite liked it. I didn't know like how long I was going to stick with it because it's, you know, it is kind of quite, you know, it's always the same sort of concept. It's always an interview. And then people get to that episode and they're like, I need to see where this is going to go next.
Well, we're going to do that with this show because we're about to go to Apex right now. But guys, that is the antithesis of it, and we're going to go to the second hour of the show if you guys will still be here, which hopefully you will be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because then we're going to go into full spoilers to just talk about everything because I'm too much of a fan and I want to talk about everything about this stuff and just all the bonkers historical characters. You think like, okay, this is what we're going to do now. So, guys, do tune in. after the ads. We'll be back at 5 minutes past 3. And yeah, with more of the Amelia Project. Take care. Hey guys, welcome back to LOL starring Chris Smith, the best comedy show on London Radio. Why is that? It's because it's the only one that's on here. Guys, we are still on air, 5 minutes past 5, with the amazing creators of the award-winning comedy podcast series, The Amelia Project, Phillip, Thorne, and Øystein, Ulsberg. Nice to have you back on here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So the first hour of the show, we were talking about how the show got started, like the characters, like how you got the actors involved, the writing, everything. Now, to give everyone a warning, we're going to go into full spoilers. We're going to go into details about the show because, let's be honest, we can't talk about the show that much without getting into a little bit of what's going on. So the first question I have to ask is, why Coco? Why his fascination with chocolate?
Yeah, why Coco? I mean, I think we want... So Øystein and I are both big Twin Peaks fans. And in Twin Peaks, there's obviously... Twin Peaks has a signature drink, which is strong black coffee. And so I think we also wanted to have a signature drink, but we wanted it to be a kind of silly drink. So I think what kind of tickled us is this contrast between, on the one hand, talking about fake deaths and death in general, which is kind of quite grim, and then contrasting that with this kind of quite childlike, whimsical drink, which is, because we don't call it hot chocolate, we call it cocoa, which I think kind of sounds even more. So I think that's sort of how it came about. I don't think it was meant to be as much of a feature originally as it ended up being. I think that just kind of happened.
I mean, have you had fans bring you cocoa?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, we have. We when we've done both, when we've been to kind of I think it was the was it PodCon UK. There were some fans who brought us presents. When we did the live show recently, fans brought us presents, and cocoa is a regular fixture in those. Yeah, in that.
And they do their goal, I imagine, like good wine or champagne,
Well, I think nobody's bought a Veuve Clicquot for us yet.
We did at our last live show. Somebody gave us a huge like a box of a Veuve Clicquot box, and I was like, my goodness! Open it up, and it was full of Maltesers. Because the other thing that gets mentioned a lot on the show is Maltesers, and that one wasn't planned either. That just I remember I wrote that in episode 3 or 4. I think it gets mentioned the first time. I just came up with a joke that revolved around Maltesers. It was never supposed to be a running gag, and then Øystein picked it up a few episodes later and also added a joke about Maltesers, and then it just became a thing. But that was not planned in any way. But yeah, we often get, especially cocoa and Maltesers. Veuve Clicquot, not so much. But if anybody wants to gift us a bottle of Veuve Clicquot, we wouldn't say no.
What are you doing? Give them some good alcohol. But yeah, let's get into this. So the interviewer himself, main moped Arthur, essentially, is, as I have been described, if Monty Python decided to do Sherlock Holmes, he is a charismatic, albeit lazy man who likes to sit at his desk, not do much work, except just listen to stories, but the whole time. And it's literally season 1, you sort of feel like, okay, this is just a daily job, until you sort of realize going onward that he is a lot older than he seems to be. That he is this eternal figure. So was that from the get-go always going to be a thing, or was that something we were just like, you know what? Let's make him this person. Let's do more to it.
I think the latter, actually. We didn't know at the beginning of writing that he was going to be somebody who'd been around for much longer than a normal human lifespan. That is something that very much grew out of the way that we wanted to progress with the story, in a way. I said that we had this idea for a kind of historical season, and the idea of kind of, is there a kind of historical counterpart to this this company that is faking people's death? For how long has this company or this organization been around? That's a question that we asked very early on. And already in season, is it season 2 when we've got the episode about Cleopatra, there's an episode that is kind of part of, in a way, a kind of teaser for the historical season, where some papyrus scrolls appear and are being it's the MI5 got their hands on the papyrus scrolls, but they belong to the Amelia Project, and they get some experts in to read the hieroglyphs and translate them, and it turns out that it's a transcript of the interview that the interviewer is doing with Cleopatra.
But that says so much that at the early, even the season 2, you had the idea of like, oh, we're making this guy more than 3,000 years old.
Well, I mean, at that point, it's still not clear, and I don't think it was when we wrote it either. It wasn't clear to us whether this is just one of those where he's had another person in the past who's been like him. Whenever there is an interview in the Amelia Project, they share features, but it's not necessarily the same person. So I think at that point,
I remember
we hadn't
us
decided yet.
having that discussion at the time and saying it could be this or it could be that, and we'll come back to that later. And that's a lot of the time, that's how we create the show. We kind of, well, depending on how you look at it, give ourselves opportunities or create problems for ourselves that we will come back to later. So, in the very first episode, we mention the interviewer's niece, for example, and we knew that was going to be a storyline and that was going to be something that we come back to later. That is something that we're coming back to in season 6. But we hadn't worked out the details of that story yet. We mention, side characters like, Walter from the morgue. So, we've mentioned that there is this character who deals with the replacement corpses and so on in the morgue, but we hadn't fully fleshed out what his story is yet. And we then do that in season 4. And so a lot of the time what we do is we set something up, and often we already have various ideas for how we might want to develop it, but we put a pin in it, and then we come back to it at a later point.
What storyline has been the toughest to sort of overcome? Because I imagine the interviewer having a niece is probably a big one, where in the early seasons you're like, oh, he has a niece, he's love it, but then like as the series went on, it's like he's this ancient being who's dancing, going back. He just goes back and thinks, wait, doesn't he have a niece? And you're like, uh-oh.
I mean, the niece story. The niece story is a very important one, and something.
You will get the answer to all of those questions in season 6. But it's
but I think that probably the hardest thing was.
I'm curious what you're going to say now.
Yeah, season 3. In season 3, we did something incredibly you can take your pick, foolish or brave or ambitious, or which is that we wrote ourselves. So season 3 has got 2 parts, and the first part culminates in an episode called The President, where basically the Amelia Project has to flee their offices. The team gets separated, and it all builds to a big climax, which is the episode called The President, where it turns out that 2 parts of the teams are on different ends of the world, and it seems as though the whole narrative has completely hit a stone wall. And how the heck are they going to get out of that situation? Well, at the time, Øystein and I did not know how they were going to get out of that situation. We wrote ourselves into an absolute corner. We were simply writing for, like, how can we make this cliffhanger as dramatic as possible? How can we get these characters into a completely impossible situation, not knowing how we were going to get them back out? But yeah, putting a pin in that and then going, and then we'll get to like how we solve it when we start writing part 2, if we write part 2, because the whole thing at that point, the show didn't fund itself yet. The show was still losing money. And so in fact, the whole thing was tied up with a crowdfunding campaign where we were like, once we get so and so many patrons, we will be in a position to make part 2. And we didn't know if we were going to get there. So we were like, we are going to solve that problem once we know that we can make part 2. And I think
did you have like an inkling of an idea, or was it just literally just like you were hoping that, okay, crowdfunding, please do take a while because we've got absolutely nothing?
We had smatterings of various ideas, but
I remember there were more than smatterings, and they were wildly different, and we weren't happy with any of them.
I mean, has that changed later now? Because I will say, even with this current season, you have sort of put the characters, Arthur and Kozlowski, in a bit of a bind. You have put them in. It was just like, have you put yourselves in the corner again where you're like, oh, we'll just move this, we'll figure this out, or you like, no, we know where this is going to go.
We know where it's going to go.
No,
we've not
this
put
season
ourselves.
Is very different. I think that was the only time we did it. And to be fair, I think I was inspired by what's his name, Vince, the creator of Breaking Bad.
Names,
whoever, great showrunner. And I was watching an interview with him, and they did exactly that with the it's been a while since I've watched Breaking Bad, but the is it the season 3 cliffhanger, where again, where things just seem to just completely reach an impasse, and he said that their writing philosophy on that show was actually in their writers' room was just write yourselves into impossible situations, and then in the next session we'll figure out like how to get out of them. But like he actually actively encouraged the writers in the writers' room to write his characters into impossible situations. So I think, and I just read, so I think that's where we took some of our confidence from.
I mean, in a way, it's something we've done it in a smaller scale. I think within episodes, it's that idea of writing a client into an impossible dilemma that then we find some way of getting out of through the kind of interviewer's ingenuity. I think that is something that kind of tickles us within episodes, and we've done that sort of successfully within episodes before, but this was doing it on a completely different scale. I mean, we did manage to get out of it, but it is wacky and convoluted and complex, and we did, like, when we're looking back at season 3, although there's a lot about season 3 I really, really love. I think there are some fantastic comedy moments in there. There's also a lot we could have learned from writing season 3 where we went, but let's plan it better next time.
Fair enough. Because we just go and see some the tinker with the ballerina, I think, is one of my favorites, just because it just shows that for some reason the interviewer is also a good ballet dancer. It's just like, okay, good to know that's also a thing.
I mean, one of the lucky things about writing a kind of quite absurd comedy is that you can chuck in a very ridiculous solution to a problem and get away with it. If it's funny, you can get away with it, and I think we do occasionally kind of lean on that.
Because I imagine a character that I don't know, like, whether he's challenging or whether he's fun to write is Kozlowski, in the sense that he is an enigma in the show. Because even when you hear his stories, like essentially his origins of not only how did he manage to become this being, but also I think it's like season 5, like how part 2 is like how you learn how he became basically the best surgeon in the world. The way you do that. Is there a level of just like, okay, we know where this is going to be. His story is going to be that level. How ridiculous can we make him be? Or does he have to be like, no, some of this has to at least make some kind of sense?
He has it's so funny that you're asking this question, because just yesterday, we listened to the first sound design draft of an episode called The Phoenix, which is coming out in a few weeks, which is the episode about Kozlowski's backstory, and which so that character and which answers many of the questions that people have been asking about Kozlowski, and we had that episode figured out not from the moment we introduced Kozlowski, but we were discussing it from very early on, and the kind of direction was there, even if we weren't entirely sure how that story was going to play out beat for beat.
I think another thing that's worth kind of mentioning about Kozlowski that people will only kind of discover as they kind of work their way through the show, is that when you get, he tells these magnificent stories about his life, and he talks about things that have happened to him. And people very often take that at face value, and it takes people a while, I think, to kind of go, wait a minute, but it doesn't add up. I don't understand. It doesn't add up. And kind of having an unreliable narrator as a character, I think, is a fantastic device. And I do love the fact that we can play with him telling any kind of story, and people thinking that, like, oh, now I've got him. Now I know the truth. And then he'll tell another story, and you'll be like, it wasn't that. It's something else.
Which infuriates me as a listener, because I'm just thinking, like, damn, I thought I worked it out. I mean,
yes.
It does show that even in recent episodes, you still kind of play around with, you still meta a little bit, play around with it. I mean, like, I won't talk with the medium, but like last 2 episodes, Death in Babylon, you do play around a little bit with time, which is very fun, especially then. We've just been like, and then Joseph and his dreams, where you go real meta, like, oh, okay, we're going outside of it. Do you still have fun being like, oh, okay, we're having fun with the listeners, we're gonna make it, we're gonna have fun with them and go in these sort of weird ways, but they also making sure, like, no, it still is coherent. It makes sense to everything. It's just like we're having fun.
I mean, I think that's one of the things that makes us laugh.
I think that's why we're still doing the show now, 7 years later. I think, because we are still kind of surprising and challenging ourselves, and by extension the listener, hopefully, and because although on the one hand there is this very fixed frame, so that you're going to get a story that is in the very broad sense about death and rebirth, at the same time, whenever you click play on an Amelia episode, you also don't know what you're going to get at all, because it could be sci-fi, it could be horror, it could be really silly comedy, it could be something really sad. We riff on all sorts of different genres, and I think that because there is that because there is that flexibility within the Amelia world, that is why we are still I'm still as excited about the show as I was on day one, and still every time I hit publish on an episode, I'm still terrified and excited.
And I mean, that points back to kind of what I was saying earlier about the name of our company, Imploding Fictions. It's whenever we've built the fiction, we do want to pop it, and play around with it. And that's one of the things that is the most fun to me to do, is the way that we can twist and turn and defy expectations. And I think that is what our fans and listeners come to appreciate as well about us. And I think probably one of the things that isn't for everybody, and that's fine. If you want something that is much more kind of neat and streamlined, there's lots of great comedies out there that'll do that for you. And we're the show for people who want to go, I didn't see that coming. That was very left field. I'm loving it.
I mean, because especially with there's season 5 where you delve into history and everything else. Were there any particular people that you were thinking next? You were like, okay, we've got to do this one. We just have to. There's no argument about it.
I mean, most of them. Like once we decided to do season 5. We thought, okay, it's going to be a regular season. It's going to be like 12 episodes or so. And then, and then we started kind of working our way back, and we were like, but we've got to have this person, and we've got to have this era, and we've got to have this moment in time and this particular place, because that has an atmosphere that we have to capture. Like there's no way we're not going to have a Wild West episode. And then it just kept coming. And the history turned out to be such a rich source of inspiration that season 5 is now, as long as seasons 2, 3, and 4 put together, or whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I mean, into 3 parts.
Yeah,
we did. Yeah, and it was. I mean, as Øystein says, originally it was just supposed to be a regular season. Then we split it into 2 parts. And then we were like, oh my god, we're going to split it. And believe me, we could have kept going for part 5, 6, 7, 8. But at some point, we had to get back. At some point we had to move on with the overall narrative. But yeah, at some point, Øystein and I were just like, if we're going to do the history of the Amelia Project, you know, let's do it properly. This is our opportunity to do it. You know, in the future, we may come back to specific parts of history and explore them more deeply in sort of bonus episodes or bonus series or whatever. But, you know, this is our chance to do the history of the Amelia Project, you know, properly. But
we have had
let's do it.
But we have had some discussions where I remember saying to Pip, like, we already have 3 episodes in that century. Maybe we should move on.
Well, then ask the question then, has there ever been a character or a person where you've wanted to do it, but you've unfortunately had to cut them out?
Yes, although I can't remember where or when or who, but there have absolutely been that discussion. Yeah. I think, I mean, we've got several 19th century episodes, so we had to kind of restrict ourselves. And I remember the 16th century was so full of ideas, we cut things out. I remember
very often those characters are still mentioned just in passing. So you know, sometimes there are actual real life historical, because we've got this whole document where we basically listed both historical characters who died in mysterious ways and where we were interested in exploring more, or just like periods, like Øystein said, you know, the Wild West or something, where it wasn't like a specific real death a character that we wanted to write around, but where we were just like, this period inspires me and I'd like to kind of work within that time period. And then we and then we chose which ones to write, and there are plenty of characters there that got dropped along the wayside. Some of those still get mentioned in other episodes. For example, William Ellsworth, who's this magician, Victorian era magician who died performing the bullet catch. You know, he performed this illusion where you catch a signed bullet between your teeth, and he got shot through the head, and it's unclear whether this was a murder or a suicide or an accident. So, you know, that would have made very rich you know, that could have been an episode. He gets mentioned at some point, but we haven't written a whole episode about him. There's also Agatha Christie, who actually disappeared for a few weeks. And so we were wondering whether to write an episode around that. And again, that gets mentioned at some point, but there isn't a full episode about it. So there are lots of, you know, could have beens there.
I mean, one particular person that you, I don't think if you have done, I've missed it, which I apologize, but you have intentionally not said the story of it. It's the person who's literally the namesake, Amelia Earhart. It's so how much of that was just like, we're making sure we don't tell anyone, or is it just a running joke of like, the most famous person who disappeared, we're not going to tell you how we did it?
We intentionally left an Amelia Earhart shaped hole where that episode should have been.
Yes.
Because that is a story for another time.
I mean, how annoyed are fans were you just like, of all the people, you missed that one?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's this thing of like, we love doing the what's not obvious.
Because I mean, also that's apparent throughout the entire series, even as early season 1, is the fact that you do love dropping Easter eggs to other things, other properties, into everything, which I love. I mean, even like most recent season, I think with Year Zero with Zed, and I think there's a line in there which I think, I don't know, where it's like you mentioned, like, oh, where do we disappear him to? Let's disappear him to France, where there's this little Gaul village that you know has that is fighting off the Romans. I'm just thinking, like, are you kidding me? You somehow put asterisks in there? Just like, why? It's like, what's the best Easter egg that you guys just cherish most of, like, oh, I'm glad we put that in there?
I mean, there's another Easter egg in that episode that I really, really made me chuckle when I read it, and it's even better hidden in a way than Asterix.
Please tell me if I missed it.
But it's, you know, just the description of the star and the way the star moves in the episode. It's like, that is an alien spaceship.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I was thinking that.
And I love the fact that, and it's just not said, it's not mentioned, it's not explained, but it's there. And I loved reading that when Pip sent me the first draft of that episode.
Because even I think like season 2, I think that when we're sort of delving into more MI5, which I do love those two, by the way, they're fantastic. MI5 and also CIA, is it those girls?
Yeah, that's right.
Like the dynamic of just like, yeah, they're partners, but they also just want to keep one up in each other. That sort of buddy cop. Like I think that they could have a show themselves, just like the bumbling effort of MI5.
True. I do think, I mean, in terms of Easter eggs, I think one of the most fun things about season 5, kind of writing it, like writing episodes like Mary Queen of Scots, for example, or Jack, that are very much based on both real history and existing fiction. You know, in Jack, we're playing both with Jack the Ripper, and we're also playing with the Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle. And in Mary Queen of Scots, she appears, but so does Queen Elizabeth. And one of the fun things about writing those episodes was very much kind of looking at, and Marie Antoinette is another example, looking at real history, looking at what actually happened, looking at things that people already know, the way that those characters are perceived generally by the existing public, and then go, okay, can I, on the one hand, keep as much real stuff as possible in this episode? How much of actual history can I get in there? And at the same time, tell an exciting Amelia Project story and do something to the character that you don't expect, turn something on its head in a way that is unexpected. Can I reframe history within the Amelia universe? So there's a lot of stuff in all of those episodes that's picked, you know, just sort of cherry picked right out of history, and is actually true and is actually fact. But we've we've sort of added a layer of fiction on top of it.
Well,
I can give you a very obscure biblical Easter egg, if you'd like, from one of the recent episodes from Joseph, the one that you mentioned earlier, Joseph in his dreams, which is about, about the story of Joseph and his coat, because obviously that is a Bible story which includes a fake death, because the brothers throw him into a well and pretend he's dead and dip his coat into goat's blood. Actually, we'd done another Bible episode earlier in the season, the Wicked Bible, and it was actually during the recording session of that episode that we were like, oh my God, we forgot the story of Joseph. You know, that's one of the famous fake death from the Bible. We have to write an episode about that. So we still added that episode very late in the day. But anyway, when doing the research about the Bible story of Joseph, I found out that it's actually compiled of two different stories that were kind of like spliced together two different tellings of the story. And so Joseph gets bought by the Ishmaelites, and then later on the same page, the Ishmaelites are suddenly referred to as the Midianites with no explanation. And that is because the story comes from two different sources. So the Ishmaelites turn into Midianites. And so in our episode, Kozlovsky and Arthur have an argument about whether they should disguise themselves as Ishmaelites or as Midianites. Now, that is a super nerdy Bible joke that nobody has got.
I loved it because I was literally thinking, I just thought, I did not, that's an amazing joke in that. That's amazing. So then... Of all the seasons, then, because I mean, I've loved so many. I mean, like in terms of writing, I mean, like I'll get my favorite episodes later, but it's just like, what has been the hardest death to sort of write about? Like even personal, non-personal. What's the one scenario? Because I know you said you like to write yourself in the corner. What's the one death you were like, this is a tough one?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember actually, and this is quite early on, and maybe it was hard because we didn't know the show well enough yet, because we hadn't been writing it for very long. But I remember that we were stumbling over Klaus. I'd written the first draft of the Klaus episode, and I remember sitting like for a day researching what kind of poison he could be sent in that letter, and kind of like, is it anthrax?
Klaus
or
is Santa Claus.
Yes, Klaus is the episode about Santa Claus. It's the first sort of Christmas special that we did, and I was researching different poisons and how they would work on the body, and I was doing all this work, and I can't remember if I ended up with anthrax or something else in the script that I sent to Pip, and Pip was like, that's very serious. You've written a very silly episode, and then it goes super dark, and it feels weird, and it doesn't work. And then he sends me the episode back with a rewrite where he's changed it into, what's it called again? The poison they invented.
Diddly by struck. I can't remember. Alan just delivers it in one go. But basically, I just came up with a really silly, very, very, very long name for like a fake chemical substance. And Øystein had been doing
the word diddly something. I mean, it's just
Øystein had been like doing
stupid.
Øystein had been doing like hours of research to get this right, to get it realistic.
Yeah.
And then I just go and exchange it with a silly word.
And it fixed the episode, you know, and it's better, you know, the episode's all the more better for it. But I think that was a lesson learned as well in like how does this universe work? Yeah.
But because I know you like to mess around and have fun, have you written lines intentionally to cause the actors to break, or to be like, why are you making me say this?
I mean, we did make Alan speak.
Alan would say yes.
Alan would absolutely say yes. How many languages have we had him speak? And he spoke for what, 7 minutes in Farsi for the one live performance that we did at one of the live performances we did at a convention. He's had to speak
Iranian,
Russian.
Right?
Iranian, yeah.
Iranian,
he had to speak Russian.
But I guess the only time that we've normally I would say that it's not intentional. I mean, intentional linguistic challenge that we have given them is when we ask them to do the whole first part of an episode in genuine Old English.
But we didn't do it to mess with the actors. We did it because we really thought it would be super exciting for the listener.
We did it because
that's King Arthur.
King Arthur, which so. Originally, Øystein just wrote as a sort of joke that the first 2 lines, I think, are delivered in Old English. And then that immediately it gets interrupted by the framing narrative, and that the 2 CIA agents say, hang on, I can't understand what you're saying. And then Kozlovsky says, okay, I'll do it in modern English. So it was supposed to be a very, very short gag. And then we read through... So whenever we've finished an episode, Øystein, Marty and I, Marty is our production assistant, we read through an episode and discuss it and just check that it works and make any final changes. And Marty is a linguistics student, just done a PhD in linguistics, and was like, you know, I actually have a professor. I know somebody who's an expert in Old English, and we could actually do this properly, because we were just going to do like a gibberish, you know, Old English, just, you know. And Marty was like, we could actually get this translated properly. And then we were like, well, if we have access to an Old English scholar, then we're going to, you know, then we're going to make use of that. We're going to do this.
That's a lot of dialogue. Was that a bit of a pain to write?
I mean, I wrote it in... You know, well, I mean, the English in that episode is kind of the rest of the episode is in a sort of not Old English, but almost a kind of Renaissance sort of English that is sort of recognizable. It sounds a bit sort of Shakespearean, but so that's what I'd written. You know, the dialogue in, and then we sent it to this Old English professor to get it translated, and we went on a Zoom call with him for him to teach the Alan and Hemi the lines, the pronunciation in Old English, and then we recorded it as we were going to make that whole first
and we've put
section.
That Zoom call up on our Patreon.
We have.
It is a very funny watch, because I mean, this guy, this professor was amazing, Dr. Markus Freudinger, and Alan and Hemi. It was both a huge challenge, but they also kind of loved it, getting their tongues around the sound of Old English.
There must have been the ones where they would just look at the scripts going, I don't know what this says, but I'll go with it. Just make sure.
I remember at one point, because they're supposed to be drunk, like in the story. They're in a tavern in Old England, and they've had copious amounts of ale. And at one point I remember. So first we Alan was trying to kind of copy what Dr. Freudinger was saying, and then he had to act it, and as drunk. And I remember at one point saying, like, Alan, your pronunciation in Old English is actually a lot better when you're drunk. Like, just play drunk all the time.
I think King Arthur is probably the we were saying Pretzel was maybe sort of one of the most ambitious episodes to write, or to sort of to solve how to figure out that particular problem. I think in terms of recording mechanics, I think King Arthur is probably the most ambitious episode that we've done.
I do love that episode because it is a little bit of like you're doing King Arthur, and it's like, oh, that kind of they're drunk and just coming up with a way to get out of it. I'm just thinking, like, you sounds like, okay, like that's how you do it, fine. But you know, I still love it to death. But you do, because you mentioned a little bit how much of a challenge is, especially in this season, how like to go to sort of still do more than talk, but also in the old times. Because I think even like in Marie Antoinette, the CIA agents talk about like, why are you saying this in modern talk? And Cole's exactly like, they spoke in French. I'm being nice to you. It's like, yeah. And then like you said in the King Arthur one, it's just like, stop doing the old English, just go back to normal. It's just like, how much of a challenge is to be like I don't know, like, we're in ancient Greece. They're not gonna sound modern, but we got to at least sound kind of close.
I mean, I think, those two jokes that you just mentioned, I mean, they're very deliberately placed in order to buy ourselves the license to just write in English. And then we can chuck in a word or a reference here and there that places us in time and the time and place. So yeah, that is the simple answer to that is those two jokes are there for a reason.
No, I do respect, because it just shows like how clever the writing is a bit of present YouTube, just like how much detail you go into everything, especially I think like Legacy Vaughn's a good episode where like that could be a good way to explain like how does he go back in time. It's just like, oh yeah, he has a time machine. It's just like you could go your way out there, but then it's like no, we have this whole thing. We're just gonna leave that over there. That'll be fine. That's its own appeal, which I do sort of love. Okay, just trying to like sort of, because we've got like 2 minutes left, and I do sort of like get into so the next episode, which will be Romulus, which is coming out when? It's out on Patreon right now, isn't it?
It is out on Patreon.
It's this Friday, actually. It's coming out this next Friday. It's coming out publicly.
Next Friday. Can you give us a little bit of a tease of what that episode's going to be like?
Ooh, well,
we originally thought of calling that episode The Brotherhood, which tells you a lot about what that episode is about.
Yes.
It's very much, yeah.
Another thing I can tease about that episode, if there are any fiction comedy fans out there who's listened to The Offensive, which is a British comedy sitcom that's finished now. It was 5 seasons. It's fantastic. It's one of my favorite sitcoms, audio sitcoms ever. The star of that show, Paul Waggett, plays the titular character of this episode, and we were absolutely thrilled to get him. We wrote the part for him. He lives in New Zealand. It took
us almost 2 years to get him.
Just to get a time where he and our actors could be like awake at the same time and actually perform. Like that was in the end, we recorded him.
Almost 2 years. I think because we recorded that, we wrote that episode about almost 3 years ago now. And if we look back at our email exchange with him, I think right after we wrote the episode, we contacted him. It was so hard to get in touch and so on. And eventually, when we finally did manage to get onto a Zoom call together to record that episode, we had so much fun. And he is fantastic.
He really is. He's such a great actor, and he is perfect for the part, and you can really look forward to hearing it.
Fantastic. So you have mentioned that season 6 is happening, which I'm very happy with. How much of that is written?
It's splitting it in 2 parts. The first half of season 6 is written. Okay.
And so we've even started recording it.
Yes.
Okay, because I do know like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more episodes of season 5 left, counting the one that's coming out this Friday, and then there'll probably be a break until the next season, so it's not going to come out for a while.
It's not going to come out for a while. We're looking at, maybe late 26, early 27, depending on a little bit on other projects that are happening as well that we might be working on and releasing to our patrons and listeners in the meantime.
I mean, yeah, not that does. I mean, they've still got like 6 more months worth of Amelia Project to listen to anyway, so they're not going to be, the fans aren't going to be empty-handed. Okay, so last 15 minutes of the show, we're going to go into deep dives, a little bit of quick questions, which are the tough ones that I ask TV shows, songwriters, everyone else, where just like the hard-hitting ones where I think like they need to know. And you can say no comment on any of these if you like, but I do wish you to try and be honest with me as much as possible. So with the Amelia Project, I'll just say to both of you, first off, favorite character.
Oh, that was hard. Oh, you started with a hard one.
God.
I haven't.
I mean, I do love writing Amelia, actually, and it's one of the reasons I love writing Amelia is because Julia Morizawa always gets my rhythms right, and as a comedy writer, the rhythm of the language is very important to me, and she always gets it pitch perfect the first time.
Okay,
she
I'll
does
change this. So, favorite character to write, Amelia.
Yeah,
Kozlovsky.
Okay.
Kozlovsky.
Okay.
Yeah. I just love the way that his brain works. I love the way that he disregards literal truth in favor of emotional truth. So I think I'm going to have to say Kozlovsky.
Fair enough. Hardest character to write for?
I think
and this doesn't have to mean the main. It could be any of them.
No, I think actually, in a way, maybe the interviewer.
Really?
Oh, why is that, Øystein?
I think because why is it? Because we've written him so much, I think like by now trying to kind of still find new aspects and new kind of not to make sure I don't just fall into the trap of making him kind of a parody of himself. That I have to I have to work harder to be truthful and inventive with him.
Do you know what? I think I'm going to say Mia and Jackie, because I struggle with writing American characters and I often get it wrong. I'm often listeners pick me up on things where they go like, oh, an American wouldn't say that. And even though the actors are American, and I tell them when recording, I say like, if there's anything here that doesn't ring true, please, we can change it. I'm not like, but there are still always things that slip the net. So I think, I think I'm going to say Mia and Jackie.
I think you might just have some picky fans there. Okay. Best episode you wrote.
Can I do? Do I have to do one, or can I do three, or?
We'll do top three. I'll be nice. You've written a lot. Let's do top three.
Okay. Okay, and I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to do top three that I wrote and top three that Øystein wrote.
Oh, brilliant! And then I'm off the hook.
Fine.
Okay, so top three that I've written: Legacy Thorne.
Yeah.
Percy, which is the meta one that we talked about. And I'm going to say Main Moped Arthur, which is the episode that comes out after Romulus. And for Øystein, I'm going to say Raven, which is the episode that he mentioned, which I absolutely love. King Arthur, which I just think is so delightfully silly. And probably the episode called Jack, which is a mashup of, actually, I'm not going to say just in case anybody hasn't listened to it, but it's a very clever episode that you can just listen. Every time you listen to it, you find something new in it, and it's really, really good.
Øystein, you're going to cheat? You're going to give me three?
No. I mean, I was actually going to say, when I thought it was just one, I was going to say Marie Antoinette. I am very proud of that episode because I do really like the way I kind of took that character and gave it a spin and made her into something that you don't expect her to be. I was quite happy with myself in that moment.
I mean, I'll play ball instead of just as I think about my top three episodes right now, because they do change so much. I mean, Jack, because like you said, because I do love it so much, just because the character that ends up becoming that is I'm a long time fan of that person. Yeah,
right.
It's just one of those things. Number 2, the Royal Shakespeare Company. Just because, like, I do love how silly it is, and just like the clever writing that you all did there, which was fantastic. And 3, I can't remember what it's called, but it is it's the live show you did involving the man who wrote an entire novel with one word.
Yes. Andy Spark.
Yes.
Yes.
That to me is just like, because it's also got I can't remember the man's name.
Tom Crowley.
Yes, Tom Crowley, who's in Victoriosity, which is one of my favorite shows I've listened to as well. But the fact that you got him, and the fact that you had him play this ridiculous character, is the funniest bit.
My favorite moment from that is there's a late comma, because it was a live recording of a live show, and there's a late comma, and the late comma comes in the middle of him reciting a poem, and the joke about that poem is it's just the word hairbrush, 17 times over, and he's kind of halfway through just saying hairbrush, 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 and then this like late comma comes into the auditorium, and Tom Crowley, just without missing a beat, just looks up and goes to the late comma like, this is actually the whole show. Hairbrush, hairbrush, hairbrush. And I was like, that is...
They probably thought that they were walking into this.
Like it is just like they're just, because that is also the episode where like you have Alan speak Uranian the entire time. It's just like the entire language you don't understand. It just goes, I should say that Joey and Salvatore.
Yes. That, when you listen to that on audio, that is especially bold, like maybe a little bit too bold, because it does go on for a very, very long time. The thing is, that was a live show. So if you imagine that with like Alan's facial expression and just the, so basically, yeah, so he's talking Farsi on the telephone for 7 minutes straight, with tiny little nuggets of English thrown in every once in a while. And live, that was hilarious. When you listen to it now on audio, it is, well, let's just say it's a very brave choice. But
it is brave, because that was a good 7 to 10 minutes where I was just thinking, like, I don't speak this language. How am I going to know what he's talking about? Like, okay, I hope the live got it. Okay, so we've done best. Hardest episode to write for.
There have been several that needed kind of a lot of work to work. I mean, Pretzel, that we mentioned earlier, is definitely one of them that kind of took a lot of work to get right because it was a challenge. I think we have to mention Aeschylus, or Aeschylus, or I still don't know how to pronounce his name. That episode, we had to re-record the entire episode, everything again.
Really?
Like, we had recorded everything because nothing worked.
Oh.
And we had to rewrite the chorus. There's a Greek chorus, and especially the way we'd kind of written and the way we'd recorded the Greek chorus was wrong. It just wasn't funny, and we had to re-record the whole thing again. It's the most expensive episodes we've ever done because we did it twice, but we got it right in the end. But it was a hard one. I've mentioned 2. Do you have another one, Pip? That was
and I would actually say that is actually another one of my favorites now.
It's become one of the it's become
one of the best episodes of the show, I think. But it took a while to get right. I mean, I guess the 2 episodes that are coming up now, Main Moped Arthur and the Phoenix, which I think that once they come out, those are 2. I think that is some of our best work, and those were those were hard, or those were episodes we had to spend a long time on to get right.
I mean, is it just because it is basically their backstories? It's like those are the 2 where it's like, okay, we've got to actually focus on what this is because we need to check it.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. Sorry, do you have another one, or do you want the?
No, go for it.
No.
I was going to say, favorite joke.
I love some of the jokes that are improvised jokes. I think very early on in one of the first, we used to do those little preludes in the first season that are not part of the episode. They're kind of a little mini sketches. And in one of them, the interviewer is getting a plaster. He's cut himself and he's bleeding and he's freaking out, and Alvina's giving him a plaster. And then Alan improvised this wonderful line that's just stuck in my head, where he says, there's a teddy bear on the band-aid or on the plaster that he's put on, and he goes, the teddy bear's got a polka dot, was it a polka dot bow tie, I think, The teddy bear's got
Yeah.
a polka dot bow tie, and it just comes out of nowhere, and it's just so silly and so childlike, and his enthusiasm as he says it is so wonderful.
My favorite joke of the entire show, it's a joke that Øystein wrote. So we talked about the fact that Kozlovsky's stories are often unreliable. So there's this whole episode where he tells this fantastical tale, and then at the very end, it turns out that it might all be fake, and the CIA agents go, and it's a story that takes place in Turkey, in Istanbul, and the CIA agents are like, so what you're saying, all of that, the last like half an hour was complete bullshit, and then Kozlovsky goes, it was Istanbul bullshit.
Apologies for the Twitter, guys, but yeah,
I don't know. It's just
because I'll say one of my favorite jokes is, I think it's from Curtain, like season 4, the end, where it's just like, what is a very serious episode because it's with Alvina and the interviewer, and it's just a moment. It's just, I don't know where it is, but it's just like a moment where it's just like they're having a serious moment, like how much they care about each other, how much they do for each other, and then Alvina's like, yeah, and then the interviewer's like, oh, well, also thank you for taking the blue Smarties out of the box. Like, I keep telling you, they taste the same, but they don't, Alvina, but they don't. I'm just thinking like, this obsession with chocolate is absolutely insane. I'm just like, that's so good.
I think the reason that is funny in that is because that episode is not a bag of laughs. It's that, and so it's when that happens, it's very unexpected because it happens in a very kind of within the context that really works.
I just love it. It's a very serious episode, but then like you still get into like, he's a very picky person. He's very picky with his chocolate, which I do absolutely love. And let's see, one last question just as the end of it. So we've done favorite joke, favorite everything. Favorite fake death.
Ooh, I mean, I do love. Sorry, go ahead, Pip.
No, you go ahead.
I do love in in season 5 where we actually, the fake deaths are the deaths from history. So, for example, I do love the fact that Marie Antoinette's death is the real death that we know from history, and we're pretending it was a fake death. I'm quite happy with that sort of little nugget of writing.
Yeah, I agree.
Fair enough. I think for mine it would be the because I can't pronounce it. The Eclipse one was just like trying to work out like, what's the funniest death we could give a tragic writer. That's the one I like, the Greek writer.
Yes. Well, I mean, and again, it is all true.
Yeah, it's history.
That's from history.
That is apparently how Aeschylus died.
I do love that you hear it now. You just feel like, that does sound made up. That sounds like Amelia Project would come up with. It's like, okay.
Yeah, an eagle dropped a tortoise onto his head.
Yeah, that does sound. It's like, that does sound stupid enough for us. That could be made up. But yeah, sure. So, guys, thank you so much entirely for taking part in this interview. It has been an absolute pleasure. I wish I had some drinks to give you because we should toast the evening, but we don't. But guys, please tell everyone where they can find you, where they can find these episodes, where they can find to support you. Please plug yourselves out there. What can they do to reach you?
Well, the best place to start is to go on our webpage, ameliapodcast.com. On there, you can find links to our Patreon page if you want to become a patron, if you want to become a free patron first, to just kind of taste some of the samples of stuff we've got up there before whether you decide to support us or not. You'll find transcripts of our episodes. You'll find all the information about stuff that has been in the past and that's coming up soon. So ameliapodcast.com. And of course, you can find the show if you search for The Amelia Project on Spotify, Apple, your favorite podcast player. We will be on there.
Fantastic. And anywhere they can find the show is on every podcast website they can, Apple Podcasts, iTunes Podcasts, Spotify, all that stuff out there.
Yes.
Next episode will be coming out next Friday.
On Friday, that's right. Yeah.
Although we do recommend people start at the beginning just to kind of get to know the character and get to know the story. I think starting at episode 1 makes the most sense.
Yes. I mean, yes, guys, if you want to listen to this, go from the start to the end as you should. But guys, that's the end of the show. Thank you so much to my guest Phillip and also Ulsberg for being a part of this.
Thank you so much for having us.
I know you've been an absolute pleasure, and I mean, No, and I'm not going to. I was going to play the outro thing, but I'm not going to do that because that's your stuff. I'm not going to go into that. But I will say, just like, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure listening to you guys. I hope people listen to you and realize that the show's listened to, because all this will be on YouTube at CS Reacts. There's CS Reacts, the whole show. It recorded. You'll see our lovely faces will be shown on YouTube and on their Patreon. Your Patreon, the Amelia Project. At some point, we'll do little clips after that. Guys, thank you so much, and we will see you next time with with whatever music, whatever guests I can think of. But apart from that, guys, take care and have fun. Bye, guys.
Bye.
But no, I mean, the fact that like you guys are so busy, a lot of the fact that you two do live in different countries, I appreciate the fact that you two took 2 hours out of your day to just sort of chat to an idiot on a radio station. So I appreciate that so much.
I mean, that's it's an honor to be asked. We love. I mean, we obviously love talking about ourselves on the show, but just knowing that you're a fan and that you appreciate what we do and wanted to share us with your listeners, I think that's great.
Yeah, that's really lovely, because we often get asked for interviews and so on, and often like the people like asking the questions, it's clear that they haven't listened to the show, or they've listened to like the first 2 episodes or something. So, and when people introduce themselves saying like that they are fans, unfortunately, like, you know, sometimes we're kind of like a little bit like, are they really? And just, so being, you know, knowing that you have genuinely listened to the show and just, you know, the questions that you asked and so on, that was a real honor, actually. So thank you.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I've been a fan of the show for ages, and I just feel like, you know what, I got these try and ask these guys to be like, hey, you know, whoever's just coming up, can at least try and get them on the show. And the fact that I even got a response of like, oh yeah, they might come on. I was just like, what? Oh my god, yes, please.